Добрий день.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joined us. Media Center of Ukraine Forum continues its operation. It's day 244 of our heroic resistance. And now we will have the direct live air from the First Parliamentary Summit of Crimean Platform. We have Alina Frolova, Deputy Head of the Center of Defense Strategies and Deputy Minister of Defense in 2019-2020. Good afternoon. Hello from Zagreb. Hello. We know that yesterday the first parliamentary summit started yesterday in Croatian Zagreb. What's the situation over there for the time being? We know already that recently there was an address of Ukrainian president to all the participants of the summit. What was happening? What are the discussions inside? And how many countries joined us? The summit, in fact, split in two parts. Yesterday was a pre-summit day, which was dedicated to the expert discussions. The main role was played by the expert, and obviously the representatives of Ukrainian and Croatian authorities joined, along with the representatives of other partner countries. We held a number of discussions dedicated to the protection of human rights, or I would say the situation with the protection of the human rights in the territory of occupied Crimea and the future reintegration, and the inability of Russia to avoid the punishment for the committed crimes, and the myth being pushed by Russian propaganda with regard to Crimea, to Ukraine, among our partner countries. Also, there were some cultural events like presentation of the movies about Crimea, the photo pictures exhibition, and some expert discussions behind the curtain, so to say. And it was more like a development of platform before the formal part. The formal part was held today, and the final number of the countries which took place in the summit, we will only know it today, because the representatives of the partner countries, they keep arriving, and they confirmed their participation like just yesterday in the evening. But it's more than 40 countries in general. It's mostly the representatives of the parliaments of the partner countries, and which is not so customary is the invitation extended to the participants from the countries of Africa and Asia who are not the participants of Crimea platforms. Today we had reports by our Ukrainian representatives, and including different politicians like Nancy Pelosi as the representatives of the United States. After which there was a discussion between the parliamentary representatives and the adoption of the final resolution. We will see the final text later, but based on what we've seen in the morning, the text of the declaration includes all the current issues, starting from the blockage of the trade routes in the Black Sea and Sea of Azov. It's about the situation with the human rights in Crimea and occupied territories. So the declaration currently covers all the issues deemed necessary by Ukraine with regard to occupation in Crimea. So we're expecting summit to end up, and we'll see the final results shortly. One of the top subjects declared was the bringing of Russia and Russian authorities to justice for the crimes committed and the crimes they keep committing in temporarily occupied Crimea. So what are the prospects as to this issue? Well, the purpose of summits like this is not the development of resolutions, because we have to understand that the Crimean platform exists in a number of dimensions. It's a government dimension, of which Ministry of Foreign Affairs takes care, where the leaders of the countries meet. There is also a parliamentary dimension, which is responsible for legislative work, which is important in terms of imposing sanctions by different countries, and we keep pushing this model. For example, we developed the issue of arrest of Russian assets abroad, for which the legislation of all the countries has to be amended. And the third dimension is the expert dimension, where experts develop and propose to the governments and to the parliaments some resolutions or some techniques. However, all the summits are important in terms of declarative intentions, which talk about the aspects such as we need to develop these sanctions and on the level of legislation of every country. Alina, did our Ukrainian delegation had an opportunity to present the strategy of Crimean reintegration and how it was seen by the public? Yes, we devoted 2 hours for reintegration. I want to remind you that these documents are now just the first draft of the reintegration plan. And the discussion consisted of political part, attended by the representatives of authorities who were talking about the necessity of development of these plans, and the expert discussion where I took place personally along with the representative of Croatia, who was involved in the reintegration negotiations after the war, which was taking place in Balkans back then, along with the representative of the United Nations, who was a member of the negotiations team who was responsible for the development of the reintegration approaches in Croatia. So we were talking about the Croatian experience, and we've seen that our situations are different. However, they overlap to a certain extent in terms of both purposes proclaimed during that war. And the discussion was pretty hot and complicated. We had different thoughts, our views were different, and I had a lot of people approaching me who told me that they thank Ukraine for firmly holding to its position in terms of defining the ways of reintegration by Ukraine itself, or for example, in terms of infringement of rights of property in Crimea and human rights and other aspects which were discussed. We were holding on to a very firm position that we will not move from. We will not discuss the options of freezing the conflict or entering into negotiation until the very moment of full liberation of Ukrainian lands. Is it possible to apply the Croatian experience to reintegration of occupied Crimea? Did you find any useful aspects that we can use in future? Oh yeah, sure. Any experience is useful. Croatian situation is similar to a certain extent because they had post-military, post-war regulation, which would envisage a, so to say, soft reintegration. And my conclusion, which was yesterday also confirmed by the Croatian representatives, that before sitting at the negotiations table, there was a military operation which not only forced the guilty party to negotiation, the party who started actually the war in Croatia, but it would not have given the occupational authority the opportunity to to steal the material resources and to destroy the economical base of the country. And only after that the negotiations were able to be started. However, the experience was pretty difficult. The Croatian representatives said that, for example, the work of the courts on the reestablishment of human rights is still in progress after 30 years upon the war. And once again, we remember that the problem had a lot smaller scale that we're having now in Ukraine. Both experts and officials coincide in their thoughts that the reaction of the international community, led to the full-scale invasion what we're having now. Do the international partners confirm this opinion now? Well, let's say, put it this way. Now at the expert level, the number of people who are covering the issue of Ukrainian war, they know that the policy of soft withdrawal led us to the results we're having now. At the political level, it's not yet a joint opinion. However, there are some countries who don't think that we should have some negotiations now on this regard, but we have to disable any thoughts of such policies in future. I cannot refer to any statistics, but I think that yes, we see certain movements. For example, the Parliamentary Assembly of the European Council adopted the resolution on recognition of Russia as the terroristic state, and it has certain aspects which may influence in future, which can be applied to Russia, and the political class is moving towards this joint opinion, in part due to Russian blackmailing policies. But we see that there are certain political changes in different countries of Europe, like changes of governments. For the time being, the mood of the people is that the politicians cannot withdraw from the policy of support of Ukraine. We see this, for example, in Italy, where the government, which was not initially supporting Ukraine, now changed their rhetorics, which kinda coincides with the rhetorics of British government. But there is still a threat that some countries may change their opinion as to support of Ukraine, but the work is in progress to maintain this policy. Dear colleagues, your questions. Good afternoon, Andriy Svetina, Yasif Inform. How would you commend the prohibition by Aksonov, the collaborationist governor of Crimea, on prohibition of Ukrainian sons in Crimea, even notwithstanding that according to the legislation of Russia, there are 3 state languages in Crimea, which are Russian, Ukrainian, and Crimean Tatar. I'm not a lawyer by profession or education, so I will not give legal assessment to this. But I'm sure that Russia will punish everything Ukrainian because it's their phobia with regard to everything which is Ukrainian. But in part of their incompliance with their proper legislation, it's the tradition of violation of their legislation is confirmed by practice. They only see the laws as papers for PR. Alina, thank you very much for joining us, for joining our air. We're waiting for the final resolution of the First Parliamentary Summit. Have a good travel. Friends, thank you for joining us. Our next day, our team is preparing the briefings, follow our announcements, believe in our armed forces, and to work for our victory. Thank you.